welcome to the Monday evening.
You love ball like I do. After Dark's a must listen.
It's where I go to get my hoops fixed.
This is Field of 68 After Dark.
It does not get better than this in the world of college basketball. On the first Saturday that we have a weekend without any football, college basketball more than delivered everything that we could have asked for when it comes to entertainment and when it comes to theater. This has been an unbelievable day of hoops. We had 3 top 10 teams go down at home. We had Michigan State lose on the road against USC. We had buzzer beaters. We had overtime games. We had dudes getting kicked in the nuts and getting thrown out. We had 19-point comebacks. We had the 2-time national champions looking like the 2-time national champions for the first time in a while. We had Cooper Flagg in the first time of his experience in the Duke-Carolina rivalry, looking like a guy that deserves every bit of being the number 1 pick. It's been an unbelievable day of college basketball, and it's not even over yet. We got Utah State and New Mexico going on over here. We have Arkansas, who looks like they're gonna put a fight here in on Kentucky in Lexington, and John Calipari's return to Kentucky. That is still happening right now. We're gonna monitor that game as well. Before we get into anything, LaTulip, real quick, you got 30 seconds. What was your single biggest story coming out of today's college basketball action?
I think the theme today was Road Warriors. I mean, you look at the AP Top 25, and you had 2 29-plus game home win streaks snap today. And we'll see what happens with Arkansas here to close things out. But Missouri goes on the road to Mississippi State. Auburn goes on the road. Kansas State goes on the road. UConn goes on the road and get massive, massive wins. To me, that was one of the overarching themes. We'll get into the nuts and bolts of it, but big time storyline for me today.
Jeffrey?
The story is the one unfolding right now. I mean, that's clearly the story, the one that ESPN did not go to College Game Day for. The story in which John Calipari is on the verge of knocking off the Kentucky Wildcats in a game that Big Blue Nation thought they were going to walk in and just kind of relax. And they thought they'd get a 20-point route. And instead, it's Cal that's going to be in that post-game press conference gloating a little bit. And, man, it also what this could mean for Arkansas to kind of trigger them and get them back in the national relevance a little bit, or at least for a little while make them relevant. We'll see if they can keep this up.
Yeah, well, my biggest story is the place that we're going to start here, and that's the number 2 team in the country, Duke, facing off with North Carolina. The final score of that game was 87-70. At one point in the first half, Carolina was down 40-13. As much as I want to make this be about Duke and how impressive they are and how good their defense is, and it really registered just how big that Duke lineup is when you look at them against North Carolina, and all 5 Duke starters are taller than everyone except for North Carolina starting center, who is the same size as Con Knipple. That really, really kind of hit home for me. But the biggest thing, Jeff, watching that game is I felt like watching a NASCAR race, and North Carolina was in it with a bunch of Fiats. I just felt like the horses weren't there. North Carolina didn't have the pieces that they needed to compete at the level that you would expect. And the gap is about as big as it maybe has ever been between those 2 programs.
Yeah, it's a joke. I mean, it honestly is a joke right now. I mean, that game was over 5 minutes in, and Cooper Flagg absolutely dominated from the outset in every single way. He left his imprint on the game, right? Whether it was defensively, whether it was passing, whether it was scoring. He ended up with like 21, 7 and 7 or something like that. A couple steals, couple blocks. I mean, they're up 40-13. LaTulip, 40-13. This thing was over, 10 minutes in, and it just looked like it was honestly Duke playing NC Central and not North Carolina.
It was complete and total destruction and domination for most of that game. And look, I have a ton of respect for this rivalry. I watched this rivalry for as long as I can remember in my 31 years of life. And Rob, you touched on it right there before we got into this. I mean, the disparity in talent, the disparity in size. I thought coming into this game, and I understand the idea with a rivalry where everybody says, hey, throw out the records because, this is a rivalry game. If you just looked at these two teams, this was a horrible matchup for North Carolina. It just was. You have undersized versus arguably the best positional size in college basketball. You have a team that goes through a ton of dry spells offensively up against a team in Duke that's probably arguably one of the best, maybe the best defensive team in America. And then on top of that, you got a team that tries to get out in transition and scores, 14, 15 points a game in transition in North Carolina against a team in Duke that just doesn't turn it over very often. Their shot quality is always high. I mean, it was a bad matchup from the start before this game even tipped. And I think it played out, them going up 29, Duke going up 29. I don't think maybe we didn't foresee that in this type of game, but I wasn't surprised at all by the result.
Yeah, I was surprised by it simply because I thought that North Carolina was at least going to put up a fight, right? Like it's a rivalry game. It's Duke Carolina, and Carolina just kind of rolled over and took it. And we've seen these Tar Heels before dig themselves holes and find ways to fight out of it, and that's not what happened tonight. And I just Goodman, it was one of those things where Duke smelled blood in the water, took advantage of it. Cooper Flagg, 21 points, 8 boards, 7 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. The first 19 points of the game he was responsible for. He scored 9 and he assisted on the other 10. It was complete domination from the tip. So that leads me to question, like, where does Carolina go from here? Like, what do you do if you're this Carolina team? You're 13-10 overall. You're 6-5 in the ACC. You pretty much have to not quite win out, but you got to be pretty damn close to that and beat Duke at home in the last game of the regular season to really have a chance to dance. That's where you are right now as a North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this for a while now, all year it feels like, since we figured out that this Carolina team was not going to be much more than a bubble team. Hubert Davis, it's been a roller coaster ride. And I don't think they make a move after this season on Hubert Davis. But if this thing continues to spiral, which it very well may, because really right now, any loss other than, there's a couple in there that are okay losses, right? This one, but not the way you lost. That's the problem with this game. You didn't just lose to Duke at Cameron. You were embarrassed. And that's something that Carolina fans cannot live with ultimately. Now, again, if they go on some crazy run like they did a couple of years ago, it's a different deal. But they're not going to do that. We know that. They don't have the front court pieces to be able to do it. They don't have the size on the perimeter to be able to do it. RJ Davis looks like a shell of himself. They did a great job containing Ian Jackson tonight because, again, of their size. There was no way those Carolina guards were going to be able to go in there and make anything happen. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I think, Hubert might get one more shot at this thing. But there's a chance if this thing goes bad the rest of the year that he doesn't get one more year. Or even here's
Jeff. Here's the thing.
Rob, there's a conversation between he and Bubba. I could see this. He and Bubba Cunningham, the AD, have a conversation. And I could see Bubba saying, hey, listen, we got to do something here. You got to make staff changes. You got to do something. And Hubert is a very prideful man. And who knows if he ends up doing it or he just kind of says, you know what, that's not for me. I'm done.
Yeah, look, the thing is, and we talked about this a little bit with Kentucky and John Calipari, right? If you're going to make a change, you got to know that the guy that you're going to bring in is going to be worth making that change for. And I think that with Mark Pope, it's clear that he was, but it took him a while to kind of end up there. And, it might have been even a little fluky that it kind of got to that point, right? For a bunch of different reasons. That's not the conversation here. If you're North Carolina, like I went through this list today with a couple of people, where are you going? Like, what is I don't even know where you would go, Jeff. I don't know, because you're probably going to want to stay in the family, right? What is who would you go to that would be the right guy for this program moving? It's not Wes Miller. You're not getting Jerry
No, you're not
Stackhouse.
staying in the family anymore.
Yeah.
The family thing is over. That's over at this point.
Stackhouse.
There's nobody there. No chance. Wes Miller has underachieved significantly this year at Cincinnati. People were expecting them to be a top 25 team. They're not even a tournament team right now. So I think that ship has sailed for the time being. I think you got to go and again, make a run at one of the big boys. You're probably, again, you can start with Brad Stevens and Billy Donovan all you want. I don't think either one of them would do it. I think Billy, you're going to have to wait. If Billy gets fired, the timing isn't going to line up with any college job right away. He's probably going to have to sit a full year. Brad Stevens, I just don't see it. I talked to him a month or so ago. He loves watching his daughter play sports right now. His son is a freshman walk-on at Notre Dame. He can kind of determine his schedule. So I don't see either of those. But the next tier for me, I would, and I know they didn't win today, but I would go after TJ Otzelberger. That's the guy I would go after for me. Again, his buyout is high, but I think there is something in there that maybe you could get him. Like, I got to check into it with a buyout, but I've been told there might be a chance that you could get a guy like that. And I think TJ fits Carolina more than he fits, the Indianas of the world. Carolina is not like a fishbowl with, like, Indiana and Kentucky are different. I don't put Carolina in that class. The fans are crazy a little bit, but they're not like Kentucky or Indiana fans. So I would say TJ Otzelberger would be the first guy for me.
Mm-hmm. Mike, let's spin this towards Duke, because I do want to ask you a little bit about the team that actually won this game, right? What is their ceiling? Like, how good is this team really? Are they the best team in the country to you? Are they better than the team that they beat that's currently the consensus number one team in the country in Auburn? Are you worried about a bunch of freshmen making a run towards a national title, which is what we always hear? Because I feel like this Duke team is different than past freshman-laden Duke teams that we've seen.
They are, and I'm sitting there. It's not just during this game. It's when you sit there and watch them all season, and you go down the list, and you're like, well, okay, talent, yep, size, yep, skill, yep, shooting, yep, scheme, offensively and defensively, yep. I mean, I'm watching tonight, and just right off the bat, I mean, the coaching on top of all the talent. I mean, John Shire, you can talk about, hey, he came in, took over for Coach K. He doesn't rest. Like, you could tell when they went up 21 in the first half, he's got his arms locked with his assistants, and he's making sure everybody is locked in and that they keep, the foot on the gas and push this thing out. And so as I break all that down for Duke, I'm asking myself, how are they not the most complete team in America? If they have all that on top of we'll get to Cooper, right? And all the other guys they have around. Malik Brown coming back is massive for this team.
Huge.
Because on both ends, I mean, I talked about the positional size for them months ago, and how when you have positional size, yes, that's great. But when you have positional size and play like you don't have positional size, with a desperation defensively, with just a mindset defensively where, hey, we don't have to just rely on our length and our athleticism. That's what I love about this team. And on top of that, what makes defenses really good, and what makes this defense really good for Duke, and you could say this for Houston, for Tennessee at times, like Auburn at times, like all these teams that are in the upper echelon defensively, it's not just their ability to keep the ball in front. It's not just their ability to contest shots. It's the recovery. And then what they did tonight was say, you know what? I'm going to be really, really pragmatic. And if I can go help off, like Cooper Flagg, if I can go help off from the block and go throw two on Elliot Cadeau and make him feel uncomfortable, I know for a fact that if somehow the ball gets over my head, Malawach is under the basket to deter the shot. Malik Brown's rotating over. And that's what's so impressive to me about this team, is because I watch them, and Con Knibble plays like he's 23. Cooper Flagg plays like he's 23. Malawach plays like he's 20. I mean, it's just, they're not normal freshmen. They just aren't. So that's why, like, I go through that checklist, and I'm truly, again, asking myself how they are not the most complete team in college basketball.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. Not only do your freshmen play like they're 23, but you got a bunch of 23-year-olds around those freshmen that understand their roles and understand what they're being asked to do and understand their job. Jeff, we just saw Auburn in person last weekend. You saw Auburn play Duke in Cameron Indoor Stadium. Who is the best team out of those two?
Duke. I think Duke's the best team. I really believe that because I just believe they're getting better. Their ceiling is higher. They have 3 freshmen that are playing a ton. Obviously, Auburn's got Pettiford, but I just think this Duke team, what they have, and I know Jay Williams said it earlier, and I kind of went out on my Twitter. I didn't even look at his response, but Cooper Flagg's the best player in the country, guys. He is. I mean, Janai's awesome. Cooper Flagg does everything. He does everything. Like, he's one of – and I know I got pushback from this too. I've been doing this a long time. I would say he's one of the top 10, certainly freshmen I've ever seen. Guys, overall. Everything. When you put it all together, this guy is special. He's special. I mean, what doesn't he do? And the other part, guys, is the intangible factor that we're not talking about, that he is all about winning in an era right now in which it's very hard to be all about winning because you've got NIL. You got players transferring in and out. You got social media. You have all these distractions that honestly affect so many players around the country, but they don't affect Cooper Flagg and they don't affect Duke.
Well, they do affect some teams in the SEC, and it might have affected Arkansas this season, but you know what did not affect Arkansas this season? The Rupp Arena crowd, that Rupp Arena environment, or John Calipari's return to Lexington. He did it, Jeff. He pulled it off. John Calipari goes back into Rupp Arena and knocks off number 12 Kentucky 89-79. And we're going to tell you all about it coming up next. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM for the season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Go download the BetMGM app and use the code FIELD today. Now that the college basketball season is in full swing, you need to make sure that you have access to the best betting tool on the market, the Rhythm app. Spelled RITHMM, is a data-backed app that uses AI and analytics to identify inefficiencies in betting lines and the player prop market that will allow you, the user, to profit. You can create customized, analytics-driven betting models tailored to your personal preferences as a bettor. Users have access to up-to-the-second against-the-spread data. And if you're like me and you understand pictures better than numbers on a screen, Rhythm's internal trend analysis provides you with the kind of graphs that will allow you to evaluate past results and project future performance in a visual way. Every Division I college basketball team is included in the Rhythm's metrics. Free subscribers to the Field of 68 Daily will get 25% off for a Rhythm subscription. Use the QR code on the screen to sign up or download at the link in the description. Welcome back to the Field of 68 After Dark. We are live on YouTube. We are over on SiriusXM Channel 84. Rob Dauster, Mike LaTulip, Jeff Goodman, and we are going to be breaking down one of the most impressive wins, I will say, Goodman, I'm going to say it, that we've seen in college basketball this season. Arkansas, with a 12-8 record, with a 1-6 mark in the SEC, goes on the road to Rupp Arena in John Calipari's return to a place where he won a national championship, made a whole bunch of Final Fours, and sent roughly 683 million players to the NBA to make about $8 billion in NBA salary dollars. Jeff, 89-79, Arkansas gets the win. Woo Pig Suey, can we hear it? Woo Pig Suey?
No, I don't do that. That's the dumbest thing. That's the dumbest chant in college sports.
What do you think about the win?
I mean, listen, it puts them back in the equation now, but they came in without a lot of pressure. I mean, Cal might have come in with some, but the players really didn't come in with a ton of pressure. Maybe DJ Wagner, and Big Z a little bit because they had played there last year in Thiero. But for the most part, there wasn't much pressure because nobody was expecting them to win. And when they got off to a pretty good start, they started making shots, which is something that Arkansas really hasn't done. It was a fun game to watch, but then they kind of pulled away in the second half, and Kentucky really didn't have any answers. But give them credit, man. Give them credit. Although I will say this. I know they don't have Boogie Flan in this one, but this is a team that has underachieved per their talent all season long. So if you had told people before the season that Cal would have taken Arkansas into Kentucky and won this game, most fans wouldn't have been surprised at all. It was just how it went early this season, the first 2/3 of the season, with Kentucky playing over their heads in some respects and Arkansas completely underachieving.
Yeah, I think, look, this was the kind of performance from Arkansas that makes me wonder how they are 1-6 in the like they spread the floor.
Yes.
They were running those high ball screens. They were doing the pick and pops with Big Z. They were getting their guards in space. They went 5 out LaTulip, and they were able to get the guys like Nelly Davis and DJ Wagner and the dude Thoreau were able to get to the rim. Like it was, I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like, where has this been? This is why we had Arkansas I had Arkansas preseason top 15. Why are we just now, February 1st? Is this just like what they do in Arkansas? Like, did Eric Musselman, he left, but his spirit is still there?
That.
Where they
You're right.
All they do is they struggle through January, LaTulip, and then they find a way to be able to make this happen in February. Like, yeah, that was. I'll phrase it like this, and I'll throw it to you. That was everything that I've wanted to see out of a John Calipari basketball team for the last 6 years.
I think that's fair. I think, look, for Arkansas, and Rob, you know this because you saw it this year with UConn. At the beginning of the year with UConn, they go through Maui, and you're like, what the hell is going on? And it takes a road win at Texas, where it's us against the world, galvanize the locker room, where then they went on to win 6 of 7. And then obviously McNeely goes down. But for Arkansas tonight, I mean, this can be a real inflection point for them because no one's ever doubted the talent. I think people doubted maybe the pieces and how they fit and how they mesh. Now I think roles are being a little bit more defined, and I think they shot it to their ability tonight. They just haven't been a great shooting team this year that has capable shooters that knock down shots. But I mean, think about the dynamic tonight, because there's obviously a lot of talk around Cal, and rightfully so. He spends 15 years there. He wins a national championship there. There's no doubt that's going to be a huge story. But what about the players? What about the players that were at Kentucky last year? And if you talk about I'm watching an Arkansas team that looks like they really want to win this for Cal, you got to also think they want to win this for their guys, for their teammates as well. And those guys, I mean, credit Thiero, credit Vicic and Wagner. I mean, those dudes stepped the hell up tonight in a hostile environment, booed when they came out of starting lineups. I mean, you looked at DJ Wagner when he was crouched down before the tip-off, and if you're an Arkansas fan, you're watching that going, all right, he's dialed. Let's go. And we'll get into Kentucky, obviously, but I thought this was an awesome, awesome, awesome win for Arkansas. And now you just got to see what you can do in the next 5 games. These next 5 games feature Auburn. They feature Bama. They feature A&M. How many of those can you steal? How many quality wins can you get to just try to make a run at this thing? Because the product we saw tonight, that looks like an NCAA tournament team. That looks like a team that can win games in the NCAA tournament. But the question is whether or not it's too late. Like, did you need to do your work a little bit early? That's my question for Arkansas.
I don't look. It's the SEC, man. Like that's the thing about playing in the SEC this year is that let me bring up the schedule right now so we can roll through what they got left. You're at Texas. Texas is like a top 30 team on the metrics, right? Then you get Alabama at home, where if you're playing well, Bud Walton Arena is a nightmare place to play. LSU at home should be a game that you can win. At Texas A&M, at Auburn, you get one of those that is like a quad 1 super A, whatever our bracketologists say on Fielding the 68. There's like quad 1s, then high quad 1s, and then like super high tier A, quad 1A wins, right? Missouri at home, you can win that. Texas at home, you can win that. At South Carolina, at Vanderbilt, Mississippi State at home. So if you get hot, if you make this thing happen here in the next 3 weeks, then you got a chance to be able to do it. And Jeff, I'll put it to you like this. If they can replicate that, if you don't just have to have Adu Thoreau and DJ Wagner and Big Z going back into Lexington, you know those guys got hammered on all their social accounts, on Instagram, on Twitter, if they're even still on Twitter, on TikTok, whatever it is. You know that they saw those comments. You know that they heard those voices. You know that they had the people that they associated with in Lexington saying things to them. If you can replicate that desire to play the way that they played tonight, that level of intensity defensively, right? That level of shot making. If you can keep replicating that, Arkansas can make a run. Part of the reason why we've been so down on Arkansas this year, Jeff, is because you look at the pieces that they have, and struggling the way that they've struggled is just not something that should be considered acceptable when you have that much talent. And if you play with that kind of effort for the next, 6 weeks of the regular season, you got a chance to be able to dance. And if that team can get in the dance, who knows what can happen. And maybe I'm just sitting here getting really excited about John Calipari going back into Kentucky and doing this. So we'll see if this can continue. But that's the team that we've been waiting to see all season long from Arkansas.
Well, it's also, there's a player we've been waiting to see all year. And I think the silver lining, if there was one, of Boogie Flan going down with a season-ending injury is it gave Janelle Davis a chance to finally look like Nelly Davis. And he did that tonight, right? The ball's in his hands. He's not just stuck in a corner. He's still trying to figure it out. He wasn't perfect by any means tonight, but this is probably as good a game as he's had in an Arkansas uniform because it looks like he's got freedom now to kind of play the way that he needs to play to be successful. And, tonight, again, he was huge. Big Z was huge because he made shots. They're not going to make shots like they did tonight for the next 5 games. So they're going to have to find ways to still grind out and win close games. But, this gives them a huge confidence builder, which I wouldn't have thought I would have needed to say that. But these guys needed it.
Well, Tulip, how do you balance that? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, this is like as a former player, when you're struggling like Arkansas has this season, you have a game like this where, and they definitely made shots, but they played their asses off. And they wanted this game desperately on the glass, in the gaps, on the ball, closeouts. I mean, they wanted this bad. And what you find is like when you're in that, you say to yourself and you look around, you go, man, this shit is fun. I want to do this more often. You know what's not fun? 80% effort and, miscommunications and getting beat on a back door and getting out rebounded. That's not fun. But this is. And that's why this type of game can band a team together because you just want to replicate that every time you're out on the floor. So that's what I want to see moving forward, right? Can you handle the peaks now? Because this is college basketball, man. Like we saw with Ole Miss earlier in the season, where you go and you win at Alabama, and then you go lose 3 of your next 4. Like the goalpost will continue to move for you because we've seen it. You showed yourself tonight and what you can be if you're Arkansas, and now that's going to be expected. Every subsequent game. I don't care if it's Alabama. I don't care if it's Auburn. Like you know the talent on this team, and that's what I'll be fascinated to see. Can they replicate this effort? Can they replicate that fire? And does that toughness and confidence result in the shooting that we saw tonight? It may not be 53% the rest of the season, but you need to have toughness to make shots on the road, and they did tonight.
Yeah, and look, they don't need to shoot 53% the rest of the season. I don't even think they need to shoot 40%. They need to be able to have enough of a threat from beyond the arc where it creates the space to be able to allow guys like Nelly Davis and DJ Wagner to get to the rim. Because I thought DJ Wagner in the second half was as good of a performance as we've seen out of DJ Wagner his entire college career. And he's been a little bit up and down, but he was sensational. He got to the rim with it whenever he wanted. He was able to spray the ball out when he was able to get a paint touch. The presence of Big Z pulling big guys away from the basket is such a threat for them when they use it the right way. And you can use Nelly and DJ combined for 35 points and 13 assists with just 3 turnovers on 14 for 27 shooting from the floor. And if you're going to get that from those 2 guys, that's the key. That's the cheat code right there. How do you think John Calipari is feeling right now, Jeff? That's your guy. as your favorite coach in America. Maybe they can feel it.
Listen, I was worried if they lost that he would run out of that arena. I mean, he ran. You saw him.
He still ran out. He ran out to his post-game interview.
Halftime, he did his halftime interview as he was walking off the court. And then post-game, I haven't seen him move that fast maybe ever since his hip surgery, for sure. So, I thought if they lost, he would run out of the arena. Now, I would assume he's gonna soak this thing in and milk it for all it's worth. And he's got his talking points, whatever they're gonna be, whatever those Kentucky reporters ask him, he is gonna turn this into the John Calipari show tonight. And you know what? He deserves it.
He already did.
He deserves it.
He does. He does. Because a lot of people, including us, took a lot of shots and made a lot of fun of Arkansas over the last couple of days. And they went in there. They made us all eat crow. Cal sent all the former Kentucky players to the podium to do player media after the game, according to our Trevor Valise. I do just want to hit real quick on the Kentucky angle here, because a lot of the concerns that we've had about this team, big picture, Mike, kind of popped up. Wasn't the greatest defensive performance we've ever seen. It was not when they're not the elite offense, when they're not doing what they do and looking like the second best offense in America. This is the kind of thing that can happen. I'm willing to give some leniency here, however, because Kirk Reese is not there, Lamont Butler's not there, Andrew Carr didn't look like himself, and you're kind of getting pretty deep in that bench when Travis Perry and Colin Chandler and some of those guys are playing the minutes that they played tonight. So I think that this was just finally the lack of a point guard and the lack of your defensive stopper coming up for Kentucky, but it's still one where I think you got to kind of look at that, and it's a little bit concerning that this keeps happening with the Wildcats.
Well, I wondered in this game specifically, how are the Kentucky players going to come out? Because we know the motivation from the Kentucky fans. We know the motivation from Cal. Mm-hmm. We know the motivation from the former Kentucky players that are now over with Arkansas. But what about the Kentucky players that have no connection to Cal, that didn't play for him, that didn't play with the guys that were on the other side now? Because that's the other thing. I mean, that roster was turned over so much that I was just curious to see how that Kentucky team came out. And the early returns were good. They knocked down shots. That dissipated as the game went on. But you talked about the defense, and you also made a great point about, like, I can't talk about all this without talking about Butler and Kriisa being out. Because the big thing that I look at with Kentucky is when they pounce on you, they're good. And when they can extend leads, they're good. When they have to play from behind, the stops don't come consistently. And then as much as I love Mark Pope's offense, I mean, it's the reason why Kentucky's been so good this year. I mean, they modernized that offense. He's one of the best, I think, X's and O's tacticians in college basketball. But the problem is when you don't have point guards like Lamont Butler or Kriisa, that offense is so long developing that when you're trying to climb back into games, it gets really hard to just say, hey, here's our point guard, high ball screen, go make a play. It's still Amari Williams, pop out, catch, go into dribble handoff. Is the pocket pass open? No. All right, swing it to the side, go to the next side, dribble hand. Like it's hard to get more possessions that way. And that's a product of not having Butler or Kriisa out there. So it's hard to just grade them because they're not whole. But at the same time, like, again, I was curious to see how they came out tonight. And clearly Arkansas looked like the team that
but they're not whole
for 40 minutes.
I mean,
they're not. And Arkansas looked like a team tonight that wanted it more for 40 minutes and took advantage of the situation. So I'm not concerned about Kentucky long term. They need to get those guys back for sure. But there are some things, whether it's –
But don't you kind of think, Mike, they are what they've been over the last month? Like they kind of got fortunate early on in the year that they won these close games and they beat Gonzaga and Seattle. And right now Gonzaga is down 11 at St. Mary's, and they could honestly be on the bubble at the end of this. If they lose a couple more games in the WCC down the stretch here, they could be right on the bubble. That's not as good a win as we thought it was at the time. So I just feel like this Kentucky team is inconsistent because they don't really guard. And, either if they're not making their shots or somebody else is making shots like they were tonight, that's not a great shooting team and plays harder than them. The question I have for Kentucky a lot is they don't play with a lot of intensity. Other than Owe, they don't have anybody else who's fiery, who kind of gets them going, who can grab them like on a night like tonight and say, hey, MF, like get up in them. And like, guys, that was Kirk Risa. They don't have that type of guy.
Yeah.
And I think it's what like the reluctant. Go ahead, Rob.
No, just go ahead. What you got it, Mike?
I was just going to say it's part of the reluctancy, I think, over the last few months of not putting them in that top tier in the SEC. I mean, it's kind of Alabama and Auburn right now, and Kentucky and Tennessee and even Florida. We saw some warts pop up today. I mean, there's a reason why some of those teams kind of slide into that second tier. That's not to say Kentucky can't make a run. It's not to say Kentucky can't, be a second weekend, be a potential, Final Four team if things fall right. But they're going to have things fall right, because they're going to run into teams that are going to bring it for 40 minutes, that are going to shoot it well just like they do. They're going to want to play at the pace that they do. So that's my question with them. Can they get whole? And what's this look like over the next month as you head into SEC tournament play and March in general?
Yep, I agree with everything you guys just said. It is a shame. I feel bad for the people in Lexington because they had the opportunity to have one of the greatest days in the history of the state of Kentucky. And John Calipari walked in and spoke. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh.
Well, either way, it was going to be Arkansas had this one circled, Kentucky had it circled, and no matter what the results were of the entire season, each one wanted this game so that they could kind of hold it over the other one's head. And now Arkansas is the one that's got it. So we'll see if they meet again in SEC tournament play.
Hopefully,
but, man,
hopefully, let's get one in Nashville, man. Let's get one of these in Nashville. Maybe like maybe like the 5-12 game in Nashville. We can only hope. Listen, we have to get to the insanity that happened at the top of the Big 12. Houston lost, Iowa State lost, and Kansas blew a 19-point halftime lead. I believe that's the biggest lead that Kansas has ever blown in Big 12 play. And we will get to all of that coming up after the break. There is no sport in America that is more difficult to follow than college basketball. It can be overwhelming. That's where the Field of 68 Daily comes into play. The Daily is your go-to source for injury updates, recruiting news, and transfer portal additions that actually matter. For just $50 a year, get access to the same information that your favorite team's coaching staff is subscribed for. Quality content can be hard to find in the college basketball space. The Daily is here to help you with that. Would you be surprised to find out that the Field of 68 is home to more than 35 podcasts? More than 25 team-specific podcasts that are hosted by the people that know what fans want the most. The Goodman and Humble podcast, the DTF podcast, the A10 Insider podcast, and the Mountain West podcast. But wait, there's even more. The Field of 68 will be launching the ACC Insider podcast this year. Subscribe to this channel and come along for the ride. Well, welcome back, Field of 68 After Dark. We are live streaming over on YouTube and on X. We are live on SiriusXM Channel 84. Rob Dauster, Mike LaTulip, Jeff Goodman, and we have to talk about what happened at the top of the Big 12 today. Texas Tech goes on the road, and despite having their head coach and their leading scorer and rebounder tossed out of the game in the first 5 minutes, they beat Houston in overtime 82-81. Kansas State won their third straight game by going into Hilton Coliseum, into Hilton Magic, and beating the Cyclones 80-61 in what might be the most surprising result I've seen in a long time. And Baylor is down 40-21 at halftime against the Kansas team that looks like they're rolling, and they put 60 points up on Kansas in the second half, outscored them 60-30. They won 81-70 over the Jayhawks, who just pissed away a lead, a game that they should have won for the second weekend in a row. Mike LaTulip, I'm throwing it to you first. What is the biggest storyline? Who are you the most worried about? Like, what is your single biggest takeaway coming out of the top of the Big 12 on this Saturday in college hoops?
My biggest takeaway is this conference was batshit crazy today. That's my biggest takeaway. But I mean, you look at the two ends of the spectrum. Like, we can work our way back into who I think we're high on. But right now, Iowa State and Kansas, those were two that were just really alarming today, and I think for different reasons. I think if you were going to ask me like who I'm more concerned about, see, Iowa State. This was spillover from the Arizona game, because in OT they got absolutely manhandled by Arizona. Getting their ball taken in gaps, and that's not what you typically see from a TJ Otzelberger team and from Iowa State in general with the toughness that they show night in and night out. And then Kansas to wilt like they did today. To me, I felt like that was more of a tactical error than it was, just kind of an overarching thing for Kansas. I mean, they subbed out Flory Badunga with 17:30 left in the second half. And what I've seen from them is when things go awry, their comfort zone is Dickinson, Adams, Mayo, Harris. That's their comfort zone. And how I know that is they kept those guys in for 14 straight minutes from the 17.5 mark to the 3-minute mark. And those dudes were gassed. And Baylor, like, they kept their foot on the gas and were able to almost kind of run them out of the gym. It was wild. And it's not the first time we've seen it from Kansas. So the concern is there's concern there for both of those teams for sure. And we can obviously get to who we're excited about, but I'll start with those two because they lost in ways like I think so much of Bill Self as a coach. I think there's a lot of loyalty that he has to guys right now that may be clouding his judgment with what type of rotations. And I'll say this, Bill Self's won a lot more games than I've won. I'll just make that abundantly clear. But even for Iowa State too, like, just uncharacteristic on both sides for those teams. And in a Big 12 race that after Houston losing tonight is really heating up.
Yeah, Goodman, let's stick with Kansas here for a second because they were outscored by 30 in the second half. They gave up 60 in the second half. They blew a 19-point lead. Baylor went on a 21-6 run to open the half, and then on a different 17-0 run in the last 7 minutes to be able to turn a 63-55 deficit into a 72-63 lead. And it felt like this. Rob Wright, 20 points, 5 assists in the second half. Nor Chad O'Meara, 17 points, 11 rebounds in the second half. This kind of an ass kicking is not what you expect to see out of a Bill Self team. And we could talk about the tactical stuff. And I do think that Mike had a lot of good points, but I think that there's some bigger concerns beyond just, hey, I don't know if it's a perfect fit with KJ next to Hunter Dickinson for this Kansas group.
Hey, also, Baylor did not have Jeremy Roach or Langston Love. So they were basically down to like 6.5
Or Edgecombe.
And
Edgecombe.
DJ Edgecombe sprained his ankle with 8 minutes left.
Exactly. Right. So, I mean, you're talking about a team, and the best player on the floor was clearly a freshman from Baylor named Rob Wright. When Kansas had 3 dudes, as you said, I mean, 3 of the most experienced players in the entire country. That is why Bill Self rolls with Hunter Dickinson and KJ Adams and DeJuan Harris. And yeah, Zeke Mayo. There's something missing here, guys. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is. I thought it was still fit and the pieces not fitting together. I think it's more than that. And again, I can't really put my finger on exactly what it is, but just watching this develop over the last couple of weeks, and really they haven't beaten anybody of note in a while here. But that game against Houston, a good veteran team puts that game away multiple times, and they never did. And then in Central Florida, they struggle. They kind of get away with one there. And then today to take your foot off the gas and let an undermanned Baylor team that really hadn't done a whole lot this year, come out and score 60 on you? 60 when you're supposed to have, again, DeJuan Harris is supposed to be an elite defender. KJ Adams is supposed to be an elite defender. Like, there's no way you're allowing Baylor to score 60 without BJ Edgecombe, without Jeremy Roach, without Langston Love. Like, it's embarrassing. And the AJ Stewart thing, guys, I still don't get it. I can't believe Bill Self hasn't found a way to get this guy to be productive. It's February 1st. February 1st.
The AJ Stewart thing makes sense to me because he's just a guy that defaults to being and I'm not trying to denigrate the kid, but he's a selfish basketball player in the sense that he's out there to score. And when Bill is asking him to get out there and run offense and run sets, like when it doesn't work, what he defaults to is, all right, I got to go get a shot up, and it ends up being a bad shot.
June,
and it just has not
hold on. June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January. 8 months. 8 months. We thought Bill Self, a Hall of Fame coach, arguably the best coach right now in the game, could figure out a way to get AJ Stewart to be semi-productive by now, by February 1st, didn't we?
Hey, how long has Field of 68 been around? 4 years? For 4 years, we've been trying to get Jeff Goodman to not interrupt people on the show, and it hasn't worked. So maybe, just maybe, you can provide some advice to Bill Self on how to be able to deal with this. I think part of it is a lack of leadership, and it feels very weird for me to be saying this, Mike. You got DeJuan Harris, who is the best winner in college basketball right now, right? At the point, you have Hunter Dickinson, who is a fifth-year senior that has been in the public eye, like a centerpiece of college basketball for 5 years. You have KJ Adams, who is as experienced as anybody in the sport. And it just feels like when it starts spinning and when it starts going down, there's nobody that just can say, okay, I'm going to go solve this problem. I'm going to go win us this game. They don't have any of those dudes. They don't have guys that like the way that I like to phrase it is there's certain teams and certain players where they expect to win and they just know we're going to find a way to make this work. And it feels like watching this Kansas team, especially right now, when it starts going bad, they're just sitting there saying, oh man, how are we going to fuck this thing up? What are we going to do to be able to make this thing cost us a win? And it just feels like I don't know if it's a head thing. I don't know if it's a leadership thing, but that's kind of where I'm at with this Kansas team right now.
Yeah, and I think you saw across college basketball tonight, there are teams in college basketball that can fight through things, right? That can be resilient. I mean, we saw Texas Tech tonight. I mean, how much adversity do you want? And they went into the Fertitta Center and were able to get that win. So it's just maybe it's a killer instinct thing. But the other thing that I talked about with Kansas earlier in the season is the hallmark of Kansas basketball. A lot of times it's been big physical wings. It's been Jalen Wilson, Agbaji, it's Christian Brown, it's Wayne Selden, it's speed. Like they don't have any of that. They've got like the wings that they have, and I'm saying this as a thin guy myself, they're thin and not as physically imposing. So they've actually found a way to be a really solid defense despite that. But there's times where I just think teams can just say, hey, we're putting Robert Wright just said, I'm putting my head down, getting in the paint. I don't care. Mm-hmm. And there was really just no resistance. So that is a concerning part. Like if you look at maybe like the mental makeup of it, because they probably close out that game against Houston but like once that happens too, there is you have to fight the oh shit, is this happening again thing. Because that's a real thing that can seep in. And then the point that you made about AJ Stewart too, I mean, there were tells with Wisconsin. I mean, there were a lot of games he didn't close for Wisconsin. Like he didn't.
No, you're right.
He was sitting on the bench in closing time. So, I mean, that's one of the things where like if you look at a coach, and a lot of times Bill Self showed it today, I will play the players I trust the most. And right now there's not that trust factor with those guys.
Yep. All right. Goodman, Hilton Coliseum, Iowa State, 16-point favorites. They lose by 19 to a Kansas State team that I think we had all kind of written off. And if you want to talk about the biggest wins of the day, I think Kansas State going in there and winning that game to win 3 in a row is as big of a win as you're going to find. 20 points for Doug McDaniel, 17 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, 4 steals for our boy Coleman Hawkins. What do you make of this win for Kansas State? And more importantly, this loss for an Iowa State team that looked, I don't know, a little bit unimpressive there.
What took so long? That would be my biggest thing, right? What took so long? Obviously, I think, again, it's similar in some ways to Arkansas, right? They both spent a ton of money. They both underachieved. Now they're both kind of playing like loose in a way of like, all right, what do we have to lose? Let's go out there and let's ratchet it up, which they have done in the defensive end. And Doug McDaniel finally had like his best game in a Kansas State uniform today. He was terrific. And, you go to Hilton and you get up early and you get your – the biggest thing for them was they get up early by a bunch, and I think they're up like 19 or something like that. And then Iowa State cut it to like 6 or 8, and I thought, that's it. There's no way this team's going to be able to close out, Iowa State on the road like this, and they did. But again, I think, these are the things that we should have seen out of Kansas State weeks ago, a month ago, and out of Kansas State. Iowa State, I'm not overly concerned with. I know that might sound crazy, but again, they lost on a fluky basket. They should have beaten Arizona in Tucson, and I do think there was some hangover effect from that. Curtis Jones didn't shoot it well, hasn't played well for a couple games. Gilbert didn't shoot it well. You don't want Taman Lipsey to be your leading scorer. Ultimately, if he's your leading scorer, I don't think that's a good thing for Iowa State.
Yeah, that was my biggest thing, is that when Keyshawn Gilbert and Curtis Jones can't carry you offensively, this Iowa State team is not what they were the last 3 years on the defensive end of the floor. They're good, but they're not grind you down. You're not scoring 70 against us defensively. They can keep themselves in the game for 40 minutes. For the most part. I also, just to throw it out there, I'm going to remind everybody of this. There are, in college basketball in 2025, some kind of schedule losses. They had just played last Saturday at Arizona State and on Wednesday at Arizona, and now you got to fly back. I guess it's only one time zone when you're in Iowa, but it's still that's a long bit of travel coming back to play Kansas State at home, and that might have played a role in it. I don't know if it would have played a 35-point difference from the spread to the final score, Mike, but that is something that is a little bit of a red flag to me. I want to make sure that we get to Texas Tech and Houston, because I thought that was the most entertaining game of the day. And we got about 5 minutes here before we're going to be done on SiriusXM. Make sure you come check us out on the Field of 68 YouTube channel. We'll be there for the afters as soon as we are done on SiriusXM. But Texas Tech loses JT Toppin to a ridiculous flagrant 2 about 5 minutes into the game. He went to go throw a pass over his head. As he threw the pass, he followed through with his leg up. He happened to kick a Kansas State player, or a Houston player, I'm sorry. I believe it was JoJo Tugler in the JoJo Tuggles, and got a flagrant 2 and tossed out of the game. A ridiculous call. I think it's right according to the letter of the law, and that law needs to get changed. Grant McCaslin lost his mind. I think a paper went flying into the stands. He got 2 technical fouls. It looked like he was ready to get about 2 more. Fired his team up. He leaves the court, and Texas Tech, just one of the most impressive performances and most entertaining performances I can remember in a long time. They win 82-81 in overtime. LaTulip, will go to you first. Goodman, I want you to react after. What do you make of this win for Texas Tech? Are they the best team in the Big 12? Can we say that? Are we there yet?
They're the hottest team.
Mm-hmm.
They're the hottest team right now. That's for sure. And this was the game of the day for in an incredible slate. This was the game of the day. And I thought Tech's resilience throughout that game. I mean, whether it was your leading scorer and leading rebounder gets tossed, your coach gets tossed, the foul trouble that mounted, the guys that had to be in the game at the end of the game that otherwise, if Toppin was there, would not have been. It was incredible, and I thought it showed, the mental makeup you have to not only just get through all that adversity, but do it at Houston. Like that's it's not like this just happened in any old arena. Like this is an arena where the team simply does not lose, and you're able to pull it out. And I thought today was a great display of I don't want to say the formula to beat Houston, but if you're going to have a shot at beating Houston, you need to make shots off the bounce. If you're a strictly catch and shoot, tic-tac-toe type team like that, Houston will gobble you up. But I look at McMillan and Williams and Anderson and Walton and Hawkins. All those dudes can make shots off the bounce. And for this Texas Tech team in general, like they do that at the highest rate of anybody in the Big 12 outside of Houston in terms of making shots off the bounce. So this was I don't want to say like a good matchup for Texas Tech. No one's a good matchup against Houston, but that was the way they were going to survive on top of all the adversity. And then the Tech, like anyone that's played, like tomorrow, people go out into your backyard or front yard, go and jump in one direction and try to throw a ball on a line in the opposite direction and tell me if your legs kick out. They probably will. It's just a natural reaction. I can't believe I know they say we can't rule intent. We can't talk about intent, but I feel like that's a pretty big factor in these types of scenarios.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Goodman, what do you make of this performance? Oh, look, he's got the Texas Tech hat on. Let's go.
I do. Red Raiders, baby. I miss.
Are you living in a lids right now?
You like that, don't you? Anyway, their resume wasn't all that impressive. They had only beaten one tournament team, Arizona, before today. They needed this one. And to get it without Toppin and their head coach, Jeff Linder did a hell of a job filling in for McCaslin there. But, again, they're tough. They got shot makers. They got veterans. They got a great freshman. What they've done going under the radar, they're like number 9 right now in Ken Palm. So I think we got to start taking them seriously. But no, Rob, they are not, to me, in the same stratosphere yet as Iowa State, for me, is still number 1 in the Big 12.
I don't know. Iowa State, Texas Tech, Houston, Arizona's climbing up that list. I still think I'd have them 4th. They won today at Arizona State. We're going to have to talk about that in the afters here. But the thing about Texas Tech, they did this. They go on the road with not only missing their coach, but they're missing their leading scorer. They're missing their leading rebounder, and they're missing their best big guy against a team that has Jawan Roberts and then JoJo Tugler and Javier Francis next to him. Like the entire concept of Houston's roster build is we're going to be bigger and more physical, and we're going to beat you up, and we're going to get rebounds, and we're going to pound the glass, and we're not going to let you function the way that you want to be able to function. And Texas Tech beat Houston on the road without the dude that is there to be able to combat all of that. I could not be more impressed with that win. And I'll tell you what, don't piss off a bunch of Red Raiders. You have a chance to be able to win a game like that. Listen, for the people that are listening on SiriusXM, come over and join us on YouTube for the afters. We will be here on this stream for the people listening on YouTube for probably the next 30 to 45 minutes, breaking down the rest of an insane day in college basketball. For Mike LaTulip, for Jeff Goodman, my name is Rob Dauster. This has been the Field of 68 After Dark. We're live. It's the afters.
Hit the chat.
I'm not getting close to any bear.
My career high on the court is 28.
Whew. What a win for Texas Tech. What a day in college basketball. What a crazy day in the Big 12. What a crazy day in the world of college basketball. Anything to add, Mike, on Houston? Are you worried about them at all? You know, I have questions about some of their late game stuff, but I will say this. I thought that playing with a banged up Jawan Roberts and with the amount of shot making that we saw from Texas Tech, got the shots that they wanted, or at least the sets that they wanted down the stretch. They're just trying to run those ball screen short rolls, get it to Jawan Roberts going to his left, where he can take that one dribble, throw his shoulder into someone to hit that little floater, right? They had an opportunity to do that at the end. The shot got blocked. They had an opportunity to do that at the end of the overtime. And there was 2 men over there, and he got called for a travel. So, really, really impressive win for Texas Tech, and Houston takes the loss. Are you worried about them?
No, not worried about them at all. Not one bit. I mean, we talked about the adversity that Texas Tech dealt with tonight. Houston got their fair share as well. Foul trouble majority of the night, whether it's their, Francis or Tugler, Sharp, Juwan Roberts' ankle basically touches the ground on that short roll, and he was heroic tonight. If they ended up pulling out this game, we would be talking about Juwan Roberts a lot more than probably we're going to talk about him tonight. But I think he embodies everything that Houston program is, because I know for a fact that 99% of the human population wouldn't be able to return from that type of ankle roll. But you're right. Like some of the late game stuff, I mean, we saw it earlier in the season against Alabama, where LJ Cryer was like, I guess, we're just gonna go to LJ Cryer, spam the LJ Cryer button over and over again. There's a predictability there. And I thought, the sophomore kid from for Texas Tech, I want to get his name right because he came off the bench. Yalaho comes in and pretty much pulls the chair on Roberts at the end for that travel to end the game. And I thought it was great because that when Roberts gets middle third and puts his head down, he goes full bulldozer. And that was just a smart play to just kind of let up a little bit and not allow him to create a collision. So look, Houston was a bucket away from winning this game, and I think we'd be talking about them the same way we talked about Texas Tech with their resilience and their fight through adversity. And I don't want 1 point to change my opinion on who Houston is and what they're about, because I think the one thing I really like about them, I mean, there's a lot of things I like about them, but offensively, especially, we talk about their defense all the time, but offensively, they're so well insulated from inefficiencies because they're such a good 3-point shooting team, because the only guys that shoot 3-pointers are the guys that are good at shooting 3-pointers. And that is a very novel concept, I guess, for a lot of America in college basketball, because there's a lot of poor shooters shooting a lot of threes this year. And Houston's not one of those teams. So you'll always give yourself a chance to at least be efficient on the offensive end. And then in the second half today, they just turned it back on. I mean, they didn't allow an offensive rebound for Texas Tech the first 15 minutes of that second half. And Texas Tech got 10 in the first half. So they just have this switch that they can flip that is unlike a lot of teams in America. So that's why I'm still bullish on them. And tonight doesn't change my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Goodman, we gotta flip it to the Arizona schools. You are an Arizona alum. No, we gotta stick in the Big 12. We're gonna do Arizona and Arizona State. Okay, Arizona for the people that are listening.
It's signing day. It's signing day over there.
For the people that are watching on YouTube, just so you know, our producer Dagan sent us a message that says, "Go to Hurley next." And Goodman immediately assumed that we were
on the UConn hat. I mean, this threw me off.
There's two angles. There's two angles to discuss here. One of them is Arizona going on the road, winning at Arizona State. Caleb Love was unbelievable. He's been terrific the last 4 games, and Arizona is now tied for first in the Big 12. But I think the more fun angle to talk about, and the place that I want to go first, is Bobby Hurley. So for the people that didn't see this, at the end of this game, I guess Caleb Love had been yapping the whole game, which doesn't shock a single person that has ever listened to the show. He gets headbutted by BJ Freeman. The refs don't see it at first, so they give Love a T for reacting, and then another T for continuing to chirp at BJ Freeman afterwards. So he gets tossed from the game. They go back and they watch it. They see that he got headbutted. They toss BJ Freeman. Caleb Love is still ejected from the game, and so Bobby Hurley sends his entire bench and coaching staff into the locker room, going away from Arizona. Right as soon as the game ends, first of all, there's 31 seconds left on the clock, and Arizona dribbles out the clock. So there's 1 second left on the shot clock. Bobby Hurley tries to pull all those players off. Can't do it because they still got to inbound the ball to be able to end the game. So they inbound it. He runs to half court, pulls his players off, waves off Tommy Lloyd, won't shake hands, won't go through the handshake line. And then he goes into the press conference afterwards, and he has this to say to the media.
If you were right near our bench, it was relentless, constant chatter, from a couple of the Arizona players that was not being policed properly, and of course they're going to be happy with winning, but it was done with no class, in my opinion. and words that were said back and forth led, to the moment where Freeman, lost it and lost his cool because of the constant talk that was allowed to go on. That's about it. That's all I got. I'll turn it over to Adam. I can tell you this: I do get a vote for the for all conference, and I can tell you who's not getting a vote.
Goodman, go ahead. Take it away, Jeff.
The Hurleys, man, it's a reality show. It's a complete reality show. And again, much like Dan, I love Bobby. They are volatile. And, the only thing I'll say about this is, listen, it's not like Bobby's some choir boy on the court either. Okay. Like he has been known to, after a win, get a little hyped up and celebrate. I understand what he's saying. The chatter got to a point, and I actually commend him for taking his team off the court because I think it avoided what could have been an ugly situation. But, again, sometimes you got to look in the mirror too, Bobby, and understand you've done this before. And certainly, Arizona in a rivalry game like this, yeah, they're going to talk shit. They're going to, put the forks down, like I think Caleb Love did. That's just the reality of the situation in a game like this. You got to take it if you lose.
Yeah, Mike, have you ever been headbutted in a basketball game?
I've been punched in the face a few times in practice.
All right. So what'd you do to get punched?
If you can imagine that, I just doing what I did as a short, scrappy guy. Not I played at two different schools here, Illinois and Wright State, and I got punched in the face at each one. So it wasn't just one school.
I'm starting to think you might have deserved to get punched in the face.
Who was it?
I had a teammate, but I had a teammate by the name of Aaron Cosby, transferred from Seton Hall. He and I went back and forth in an open gym, and one thing led to another. The funniest thing was he was my lifting partner after practice. So he wanted to bring it into the locker. He wanted to bring it into the locker room, and I was like, "We got to go lift, man." But yeah, and then at Wright State, I had a teammate that Mark Allstork, and he actually ended up going to Illinois. I tried to help facilitate that, and just another open gym, and he thought I fouled him hard. And by that time, the look on someone's face.
You probably did.
I probably did. I was also 170 pounds. So, I can't, when you're 6'5", 200, like that shouldn't impact you too much. But when you get punched in the face enough, the look when it's about to happen. And that at that point, it already happened a few times in my career. So I knew it was coming that time. But this is right, Arizona State.
Okay, go ahead. Let's get this back on the rails. Get us back on the rails, LaTulip.
Yeah, I'll get back.
Get us back on the rails.
Goodman, we saw Duke UNC tonight. We saw Indiana Purdue last night. In your opinion, why is this not more of a rivalry? You could say it is obviously it's a rivalry, but on a national scale, like it happened tonight.
It's Arizona State.
This is the stuff that starts it, though. This is the stuff that starts it. Fair, yeah.
Listen, Bobby Hurley's actually done a good job for the most part because Arizona State is a tough job. I've said this forever. Like, they're irrelevant for the most part. And Hurley had them. I think they went to the tournament 3 straight years. They're in the equation now. They're probably not going to make the tournament this year. But, yeah, it's not a rivalry because Arizona State's not good enough to sustain the rivalry.
Yeah.
This is, again, this is the stuff that starts it. This the press conference, the chirping back and forth. If guys stay on these teams for next year.
Here's what I want to see. If there's one thing I want to see in college basketball, can't we get Arizona State versus UConn? Like, how much would you pay for that game to be there? Like, seriously, I would pay courtside seat. I'd pay $1,000. I'd pay $1,000 for that. If you gave me a seat right near one of the I don't even care which Hurley. Give me something near one of the Hurleys. I would pay $1,000 to just be there and listen to those two go at it, coaching each other. It would be insane. The poor refs.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be their decision, though? I mean, can't the Hurleys make the decision for that game to happen?
Yeah, they're not going to play. Right, they're not going to. They know that would tear the
happen.
family apart, Mike. That would tear the whole family apart.
Yeah, it wouldn't be great. Real quick, just on the Arizona angle, Goodman, you mentioned you're not ready to put Arizona in that conversation near the top. I'm getting close to having them in the same tier. I think they got to be fourth right now at the top of the Big 12, but I'm getting close to at least being willing to listen to the idea that they can be in that top tier.
Them. Rank your top five. Rank your top five right now in the Big 12 in order. I want to hear them.
Okay, it's Houston and Iowa State are 1 and 1A, and then for me it's Texas Tech and Arizona.
Not 1 and 1A.
I just said 1 and 1A. Houston, Iowa State. Houston, Iowa State.
Houston's 1. Houston's 1.
How many times do I need to say it? Houston, Iowa State. Do you mean say it again? Houston, then Iowa State, and then
1A.
The next tier. I would go.
Who does that? That's a cop out.
Everybody does
1 and 1A. 1 and
I just
2.
said Houston, then Iowa State. I can say it again. Houston, then Iowa State. I'm even doing the hand motion. Good. You can see the hand motion for the visual learners out there. Then I would have Texas Tech and Arizona, like in that next tier. I guess it would be what, like 3A and 3B. And then I would probably go to the Kansas level, the Baylor level. I probably would have, I think you got to go Baylor over Kansas at this point. But to me, that's kind of how it shakes out at the top of the Big 12. Houston, Iowa State, Arizona, Texas Tech. Houston, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Arizona.
All right, LaTulip, give me your top five in order. No,
I
1A,
mean,
1B.
the same top four as Rob, but I still, despite the result today, I'm still taking Kansas over Baylor. I mean, if you remind yourself with Baylor, today was a quality win for them. Outside of today,
they've had nothing.
A miracle St. John's win.
Right.
That's pretty much it.
That's right.
And I mean, we didn't talk about it with Kansas Baylor, but they needed this one today bad because they're in the field currently. I think on our fielding the 68, they were 9 seed, I believe. And part of that is I think still coasting from preseason expectations. Because if you look at the resume in totality, I'm not even sure they're a 9 seed, but they earned that back today for sure.
Yep. I got Iowa State 1. Iowa State 1, Houston 2, Kansas 3, Arizona 4, Texas Tech 5.
Who? Kansas 3 still?
Yep, still 3. Last I checked, they still have Bill Self. They'll be okay. They'll figure it out.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to get to my favorite portion of the programming. We're going to get to the best portion of the programming. The UConn Huskies. Put that hat on, Goodman. Put the hat on. Oh, it looks so good. Put it on. Put on that UConn hat, Jeff. Put it on. Yeah. UConn. UConn goes on the road to Marquette, wins 77-69. LaTulip, I'm going to you first on this one. I solo ball. I don't know what else you could say. I think every shot that he hit in that game felt like, oh, God, please go in. Oh, God, please go in. Oh, God, please go in. And then ended up going in. What do you make of this performance from UConn without Liam McNeely?
I'm Luka Doncic just got traded for Anthony Davis.
What?
No,
no. It's got to be fake news. Fake news.
I know it isn't.
No,
I just got the Shams. Yeah.
The Dallas Mavericks are trading Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and the 2029 first-round pick. What?
Holy shit. Holy shit. What? Whoa.
What? So I figured that was worth. I figured that was worth. I didn't even know if you asked me the question, Rob.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I love that we put this on, and then Dagan brings up the box score on the bottom for UConn 77, Marquette 69. Let's go. Come on, LaTulip, let's go.
Yeah.
No, I want to break down this trade. Forget about UConn. Come on. I need to process this trade. LeBron and Luka.
Talk to UConn. Talk UConn. We'll get to this. We'll talk later. Go ahead.
This is important win, obviously, for UConn. I think Big East standings, NCAA tournament seeding, all that, yes, but also important, I think, because it kind of reaffirms to this team tonight. We heard Hurley in the huddle that when you play desperate, when you play tough, when you guard the way they guard, we know how capable they are offensively. I mean, solo ball, how many times do we have to see this and not call that dude one of, if not the best shooter in America? I mean, he does it night in and night out. And tonight it was 3 different occasions where Marquette cut it to single digits and he hit a 3. Just back-breaking 3 for Marquette. But look, like, this has been a process for UConn. And the process that they're dealing with is, these players in particular, is carrying this brand. Because, Rob, you're the UConn guy, and I don't think I'm out of pocket for saying this. This is a less talented team than the last 2 years, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's
not an insult either. The last couple teams had like 5
No, it's
pros.
not.
Yeah.
But my point is that every single night they are up against it because the brand is still the brand. So you are teams, when they beat UConn, it's still beating UConn, right? If you beat Dan Hurley, it's still beating Dan Hurley. And that is a lot to carry for a team that's less talented than those teams those last 2 years. But tonight it was from the jump, man. Like, from the jump. They obviously made shots, but they were so disruptive defensively. Marquette beat them to some 50-50 balls throughout the game, but for the most part, I thought they were the tougher team. And you can see just from that matchup in general, this is why everybody loves the offense and scheme that Dan Hurley has offensively. But the teams that fall into the trap of Marquette are the teams that go high ball screen all game, that just run vanilla offense. And what Dan Hurley does with the staggers, with the pin downs, with the slips, like, it's shifting the help, it's shifting the gaps, it's shifting, you can't trap, you can't blow up ball screens. And that had Marquette just spinning all night. And I know they turned it over a ton, but when they got shots on rim, they were going in because they were high quality looks based off of the stuff that they schemed up. So this was huge for UConn, and just kind of, I thought, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of felt like a get right game, and kind of a, hey, reestablish our identity, reestablish who we are, and let's make a hell of a run here in February and March.
Yeah, the thing that really stood out to me was they won this game and they played this way while turning the ball over 25 times. They took 42 shots to Marquette's 63 shots. They gave up 20 free throws in the first half of this game, and they found a way to be able to be up by 13, right? Like, if you look at kind of the numbers and you look at the way that this played out, when you look at what Marquette wants to do and how they want to play versus what UConn wants to do and how they want to play, like, I would say there was no chance that UConn won this game, just based off of the number of the amount of turnovers, all that kind of stuff. And they still found a way to win, despite the fact that Hassan Diarra was moving the way that I move out there. Like, you could tell he was not right at all. They did it without Liam McNeely. They're 2 ball handlers. The 2 guys that can create offense for other people were either somewhere between not playing and, like, more or less ineffective. And it was solo ball making those threes. It was the defensive. I thought that I've had a lot of questions and been really critical of UConn defensively this season. And I thought that this was the best defensive effort that they've had between they switched pretty much every exchange and every screen. Their rotations were there. The communication was there. They were locked in at a level that I haven't seen them. They were tougher than they've been in the past. And they still had a whole bunch of loose balls that they probably shouldn't have given up. To me, it was a really, really impressive, gutty performance, a toughness performance that we really haven't seen out of UConn at this point for a long time, right? And I'm going to talk more about this on the Top Dogs podcast tomorrow. But Goodman, I want to flip this to the other side, because at the start of the season, you were down on Marquette compared to me, right? And I think that you said that there's a quote that's been floating around where you said that they might not make the tournament, which is just kind of like that was you just being you, right? That you weren't saying they weren't going to make the tournament, but comparatively, you were down compared to us. Since January 1st, and I just brought it up right now, according to Torvik, they have been the 56th best team in America. since January 1st, according to those efficiency numbers. How concerning is this for Marquette? How worried should all of us be? And where do they kind of stand in the pantheon of Big East teams right now?
Well, I think part of the thing was Cam Jones was playing at such a ridiculous level, and people didn't know that coming into the season, right? He's slowed down. They've adjusted. Certainly teams in the league have adjusted and slowed him down a little bit. And their supporting cast offensively is just okay, Rob. And I kind of said that from the jump. Like, he was playing like the best player in the country. And I think since over the last month or so, he's probably been playing like a third-team All-American. Well, that's not good enough when some of these other guys haven't really stepped up consistent. Chase Ross was really good tonight, but like Stevie Mitchell and Joplin were just okay. And Ben Gold, let's face it, like Ben Gold wasn't very good tonight. So, puts so much pressure on Cam Jones, and I just don't know. It's a long year, and I feel like he's kind of feeling the effects of having to carry this team all season long.
Yeah, he's become the focal point defensively, Mike, and that is a tough thing for anybody to kind of carry. I'm gonna put it to you here. Right now, St. John's, Rick Pitino and St. John's are all alone in first place atop the Big East regular season standings after a thrilling. They blew a 19-point lead in the last 8 minutes to Providence and found a way to be able to win. Kadari Richmond, 24 points, 8 boards, 8 assists, 3 steals, by far his best game with the Johnnies, right? Hit the game-winning jumper. Marquette is at St. John's on Tuesday. On Friday, St. John's plays at UConn. On Saturday, Marquette is at Creighton. And Creighton, by the way, is tied with Marquette for second place in the Big East regular season standings. Creighton's really kind of turned this thing around. They had a fun win. Stephen Ashworth banked in a corner three somehow to be able to beat Villanova at Villanova. But where do you stand on the top of the Big East? Does it still run through Stores? Is it is it Rick Pitino? Is it his championship to win here, Mike?
I think the top of the Big East is freaking wide open. And I say that because I'm not sure I feel confident about anyone right now winning this league. Because I think there's concerns. You can go through each one. St. John's, Marquette, Creighton, UConn. I mean, I have concerns about all four of them if you talk about winning the league over the course of these next 9 games. But I mean, St. John's today, they play such a fascinating brand of basketball because as much like every time we think of really good defensive teams, we think of slow pace, and they play a very hectic pace offensively. And what's interesting is like I was trying to think of a team to compare St. John's to, and the team I kept coming back to was the 2017 South Carolina team that ended up going to a Final Four. I mean, it was like Sindarius Thornwell and PJ Dozier, and they had really good like positional size, and Chris Silva, and they were athletic and they guarded. They couldn't really shoot very well, but they dictated the game with their strength and their athleticism. I mean, that's kind of who they remind me of. But you can see there's points in the game where, Abdur-Rahim was insane today. I mean, he stepped up in such a big way. And you could see, like, if you make shots against St. John's, it really puts strain on them. And the one thing St. John's does defensively better than any team in America is they will force you into shots that you don't want to take. I mean, the last 4 seconds of the shot clock, they force more of those shots than anybody in America. And if you're shooting in the last 4 seconds of the shot clock, odds are it's a shot that you don't want to take. And that's how they do that. Over the course of 40 minutes, we saw it in the Xavier game. We saw it again today. Like, you need 40 against St. John's. So, I mean, all four of these teams, Marquette showed there some warts tonight. Creighton is probably, I mean, St. John's obviously probably in the best spot, but I mean, Creighton would be the next team that you feel like is surging at the right time compared to the other two, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't wait. Hey, Rob, I can't wait till that game we're going to at the Garden. UConn St. John's in about 3 weeks from today.
Sunday, February 23rd. It's going to be a fantastic weekend in New York when it comes to basketball, where you're going to get Duke, Illinois in the Garden at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, and then UConn, St. John's in the Garden at noon on a Sunday. I wonder how many fans are going to go to both games and wake up and still be drunk from the night before for going to the game on Sunday afternoon. Hopefully that won't be Jeff Goodman. I want to get to the SEC because we got to talk about the SEC. It's absolute. Let's put this into context, right? Today in college hoops, 11 ranked teams lost. 10 of those 11 ranked teams lost to teams that were lower ranked or unranked. 8 of the top 15 teams in America lost. 5 of those 8 lost at home, and 3 top 10 teams lost at home. Each of those, according to ESPN Stats and Info, is the most or tied for the most in the history of the AP poll, which means that we are now an hour and 25 minutes into the show, Jeff, and we are finally talking about a top 10 matchup between Tennessee and Florida. And the Vols, without Zakai Ziegler and without Igor Milicic.
This is insane that we got this far. And
it tells you what today was in college basketball. The Vols completely rolled Florida. They won by 20 without their starting point guard and without their starting foreman. What the hell is going on in the SEC? What the hell happened in Knoxville today, Jeff?
I mean, they just played harder, man. They had been embarrassed in Gainesville earlier this year. And whether it was with or without Zakai Ziegler and Milicic or not, they were going to play hard as shit. And that's what they do. And Meshack sets the tone. The crazy part was Okpara had 2 fouls like 3 minutes into the game. Cade Phillips came off the bench. He played tough as shit. I mean, they did what they do, right? They did what they do. They controlled tempo. They got it into a rock fight for the most part, and they made it really difficult for Florida's guards. And again, Meshack, man, I don't know how many guys I would rather have on my team defensively than Jamal Meshack. Like, he is an absolute killer. And he was chasing Clayton around the court. Then when Clayton got hurt, he was on Elijah Martin. Those guys went combined 5 for 25 from the field. And I've said it, like, they're as good a backcourt as there is probably in the country. And Will Richard was invisible tonight. So Tennessee just out-toughed them and made enough shots. Chaz Lanier made some, and Gainey made a couple, and Dubar came in and was decent. But, again, it was toughness. It was toughness.
Mm-hmm. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the reluctancy to put Kentucky at the top of the SEC in that tier. And there's been the same type of reluctancy with Tennessee, and they've gotten cracks at the top. I mean, they've gotten, they got ran out of the gym at Florida. They already lost to Kentucky once. They lost to Auburn. So I think they needed this one to feel like they can kind of be in the hunt. But look, I thought this was one of the most impressive wins of the season. And I thought it was one of the best coaching jobs of the season, because the more I watch this game, and look, Zakai Ziegler is such an important piece to have missing. But what it did was, I think, make them a little bit more bigger defensively, a little bit more athletic defensively, because you could bring in Cade Phillips. I mean, Milicic is great as well, but Cade Phillips is more athletic. And if there's any team where you needed that type of personnel, it's against Florida, because of their rebounding and because of their guard play. And you needed to bother them. And I thought they did exactly that. I mean, you look at, like, I talked about the personnel, but and the coaching too with Barnes. I mean, Florida couldn't even get into their press that brought them back in the game against South Carolina, because the 2 times they went into it, Gainey got the ball off the floor, Uptak, Para, and then they had a hit ahead to Chaz Lanier for a 3. And then Florida was just reluctant to get back into it. And then offensively, when they got in the half court, then this is the story with Florida, was just, you got great size and positional size, but how are you chasing off-ball screens? I mean, Tennessee runs floppy, meaning like they got 2 bigs at kind of the block extended, or they're setting those down screens on the baseline to have Lanier, have Gainey fly out. And Florida had no answer for it all night. And Lanier and Gainey were just picking on these dudes, because they're like, hey, we're not going to go high ball screen. That's not our strength. We don't have a point guard. So we're just going to go floppy action. And Lanier can either straight cut off it and hit a 3, but Lanier and Gainey are so good at reading that defender coming off behind them, because what floppy action does is occupies both sides, right? Because the ball's in the middle third of the floor. Exactly. So everybody's one pass away. So I'm sitting there and watching, and you got Lanier, and it's like, hey, are you going to try to shortcut this screen? Okay, cool. I'm going to bump back and hit a three. Are you going to trail me? Okay, I'm going to curl. And if I curl, now I got Akpara on a cleared side. I got Kate Phillips on a cleared side. There's no help, no tag. I got a lob. Like, they just were so efficient in that action all second half. And it got Lanier going. It got Gainey going. And the best part, too, was if you don't have the actions off the floppy, then now what you got is Gainey either triggering it from the top of the key or Meshack, and you just say, hey, one-on-one, head up, late clock, get downhill, get to the basket, middle third. Yeah. I mean, it was such a great game plan without your point guard. I thought it was one of the best coaching jobs of the season.
Yeah, and without when you have those guys at the top of the key there, you actually have a matchup that you're going to be able to take advantage of in that spot. So a lot of times it ends up being Walter Clayton on on Jordan Gainey. And that's something where he can win that matchup one-on-one. To me, the biggest thing was Florida came in this is supposed to be one of the best offensive teams in America, right? This is supposed to be a team that could put up 80, 90, 100 points on any given night. You shoot 24% from the floor. They were 4 for 27 for 3. And this is going to happen a lot when you go up against a team like a Tennessee. But if you're Florida and you're built to be able to win games in the 80s and 90s, you got to find a way to be able to win games in the 80s and 90s and play games in the 80s and 90s. So that's kind of what stood out there for me. Number one team in the country, Jeff.
Hey, I got a quick stat for you on that. So the last time Florida was held under 45 points, 1990. That's 1,167.
Was that Lon Kruger? Was Lon Kruger still at Florida then?
Might have been Lon.
That might have been Lon Kruger. That's a hell of a stat. Number one team in the country. It's 12:31. We are 91 minutes into the show, and we are now talking about the number one team in the country going on the road and winning a game against a ranked opponent. Auburn shoots 14 for 28 from three. Janai Broome has 20 points, 12 boards, and 4 assists, and is very clearly not healthy yet. And the Auburn Tigers beat Ole Miss 92-82 in Oxford. The thing that stood out to me more than anything else, Jeff, Chad Baker-Mazara, Todd Pettiford, Miles Kelly, those guys made the threes that they needed to make, and Auburn was able to win just kind of running stuff through Janai Broome, letting Ole Miss come and double, and letting him kind of pick people out all over the place.
That's the thing. That's the difference now is, right, you've surrounded Janai Broome. I remember when we saw him play Kentucky last year. It felt like there weren't good enough pieces around him. Now it's pick your poison, right? You try to double him, he's going to kick it out. And again, we saw a game last week where they did make shots, but that's a rarity. For the most part, they've got guys that are confident, that are making shots, whether it is Baker-Mazara, whether it is Jones or Miles Kelly, or they got enough guys. Pettiford obviously coming off the bench, and Chaney Johnson can make them. So I think that's the hard part is Janai has so much space. It's like, what do you do? What do you do? You go ahead, try to double him. He's a pretty good passer in the post. And if you don't double him, he's going to pick you apart, especially Ole Miss. Ole Miss just doesn't have the bigs to match up. So just another win, just another road win for an Auburn team that is just methodical, professional. They just win, man. They just win. I don't think they're the highest upside team, but
Mike, here's the thing that really blows my mind when it comes to Auburn, right? Everybody else, no matter who it is, especially in the SEC, but pretty much anywhere else in college basketball outside of Duke, you're going to slip up somewhere. You're going to have a night where the shots aren't falling. You can't execute offense. You can't run your game plan. You can't do this. You can't do that. You don't show up that night. You have an off night. Your best player broke up with his girlfriend, or you guys couldn't sleep because the hotel room had the heat broken. It was whatever it is. Something happens for everybody, and it doesn't happen to Auburn. They don't lose. They're off nights. They find a way to be able to win at South Carolina without Janai Broome, right? They're off nights. They find a way to be able to win. They're off nights. They beat Tennessee in their own building when they only score 53 points. I'm completely blown away every time I see them find a way to be able to do something like this. They just get it done. They just get the job done. Doesn't matter how they do it.
You're right. And look, it's a strength in numbers thing for them. Right? We saw that on display today. And there's two sides to that, right? There are certainly strength in numbers for them, but a lot of it is centered around the gravity of Janai Broome. Because I just think about that second half in general, and ESPN was flashing the graphic. Hey, they're up, and Janai Broome has 0 points, and he's over 5 from the field in the second half. And then when you watch it, it's 60-58. And Janai Broome, who was getting doubled in the post, was then also getting doubled off a dribble penetration. He drives from the top of the key, gets 2 to commit, backside vacates, cross-court pass to Baker Mazzara. Baker Mazzara hits a 3 to make it 63-58. Baker Mazzara goes on to score 11 of their next 16. And that's all from the gravity of Janai Broome. 76-70, again, Ole Miss gets it to 2 possessions. This happened multiple times. 2 possessions. Can we get a stop? Can we get it to 1 possession? Can we put some pressure on Auburn? And they throw it into the post, double, cross-court skip, Jones 3. And then 80-75, 2 possession game again. Can Ole Miss get another stop? Mm-hmm. Broome keeps moving, gets Padula on him. They throw it in. Murray's the one that rotates over. He recognizes I got 2 smalls on me, turn around, and 1. Game, pretty much, at that point. So, they obviously have an incredible National Player of the Year candidate, but the guys, like you mentioned, Jeff, that play off of him and play around him. And then on top of that, what they do defensively, they don't do what Iowa State does and Houston does, where the principles actually aren't great. They just kind of fly around. They create havoc. They put 2 on the ball. They try to just create disruption. Auburn is much more, they point switch. They switch 5 ways, and it's their communication. And when I watch them defensively, it's unbelievable how much they're able to process with the amount of switching they do off ball, all 5 ways. It's special. And I think it's part of the reason why I'm so bullish on them beyond they go in and score 92 on the road today. But when they need stops, they can dial it up. And even Padula was outstanding, by the way. I think he's underrated and probably a whole different story. But on the whole, they turned the ball over 5 times in the first 3.5 minutes of this game. And then for the next 20 minutes of the game, 25 minutes, they turned it over 4 times. They just like Duke, they have a gear that they can reach that is not attainable for pretty much every other college basketball team.
Yeah, when you have 2 7-footers that can both put up double doubles with also adding 4 assists into the mix like that, what do you do? What are you supposed to do? Especially if you're going to shoot 50% from 3, you're just not going to stop them. That's the only option.
Cardwell was outstanding today.
Yeah. Yes, he's
Cardwell
terrific. He's outstanding most of the time. They're just they're so good. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. It kind of feels, how last year felt like it was an inevitable UConn Purdue matchup that we were going to get in the national championship game. I kind of feel like right now we are heading towards an inevitable Auburn Duke national championship game. And I, for one, would not complain about that one bit. All right. Last thing in the SEC, Goodman, are you ever going to acknowledge the Missouri Tigers? I got a text right here. It's from a young man by the name of Jim Root, a member of the 3-Man Week. He wants to know, do you think that Missouri can win in Rupp Arena now?
Listen, I think Missouri can win anywhere the way they're playing. They've had some big wins, this year. Kansas, Florida, now Mississippi State. They firmly entrenched themselves as an NCAA tournament team, which I didn't see coming. I don't think anybody saw coming, because if you look at their roster, it's filled with kind of, I don't want to say guys that were run off, but guys that really their former programs didn't value that much, right? You look at Caleb Grill, Iowa State. You look at Perkins, Tamar Bates, Mitchell. A lot of these guys were guys that were just kind of pieces. They played a little bit, but what Dennis Gates has done has been really, really impressive with this group, especially, and I said it, they've played a Charmin non-conference schedule. So nobody kind of knew what to expect out of them. And I doubted them until they got in a league play, and I thought they'd get eaten up in SEC play for the most part, and they haven't. So I give a lot of credit to them, and this was another big win on the road. And I think there's a little bit of a formula to beating Mississippi State, though. To me, it's again, let Josh Hubbard get his. and just make sure everybody else doesn't go off, because they don't have a lot around him still. They got more than they had last year, but to me, you can give Hubbard his 25 or whatever he got tonight, but just don't let some of those other guys get going.
Mike?
Yeah. Real quick on Mizzou and on Dennis Gates. I mean, I think, can we talk about how unprecedented this is? What he's done? I mean, this doesn't happen. You had 25 wins his first year. Go to the NCAA tournament.
Win a game in the NCAA tournament. In the portal era, it does.
But my point is, like, we saw, like, look at Louisville. Louisville turns things around, right? But whole new cast comes in. You know, you got coach out, coach in. This is the same coach. 25 wins, and then 0-18 in SEC conference play. Like, teams like that doesn't happen where you're able to grab hold of the reins and pull it back up. I mean, that usually is the start of a spiral that gets coaches fired. And now he's pulled it back up to competing in a league that we've looked at as one of the best in recent years. I mean, it's insane what he's been able to do this year. And he's found the right guys. They have an identity. They shoot the hell out of it. They turn you over. They're disruptive. Like Mizzou's for real, man. I don't think that this is a fluke at all.
Yeah, they throw different defenses at you and it just messes everybody up. Like they today they were trapping every single ball screen. And then all of a sudden they would come out and they would run that like 1-1-3, 2-3, 1-3, whatever you want to call that zone. Then you got some switching man-to-man stuff that they do. They flummox you is what they do. And to Dennis Gates' credit, last year, John Tanji, who's been one of the best players in the Big Ten, only played 8 games. And Caleb Grill, who had 22 tonight and hit 2 threes that were, I think he hit 2 40-footers that weren't like buzzer beaters. He just kind of caught it, was in rhythm. Like, I'm letting this thing go from 2 steps inside half court and buried them. Our producer, our social media guy, Trevor Valise, kind of got ripped the other day for putting up a graphic about Michigan State's schedule and the teams that they have played. Basically saying they haven't played anybody at the top of the Big Ten, and they're sitting here at 9-0. I think what Illinois fan Trevor Valise was trying to say is that Michigan State was overrated. Michigan State fans weren't a big fan of that. Michigan State today goes on the road to USC, Mike, and loses 70-64 to the Trojans. I thought it was a pretty impressive performance from USC, and it looks like there might be a little bit of Eric Musselman effect coming into play in that situation. But Michigan State takes their first loss of the Big Ten season, and now they have to go on the road to USC. UCLA next, and you get Oregon and Indiana at home, and then you're at Illinois. Then you get it gets real really quick for Michigan State.
It does, and look, the whole schedule thing. How many teams in the Big Ten have we seen? I mean, Purdue lost at Penn State. Illinois just lost to Nebraska. You know, Michigan has lost games they shouldn't have lost. I mean, all these teams that are towards the top of the Big Ten have lost games that they shouldn't have lost to lesser opponents. So I give credit to Michigan State for getting to 9-0 and not having a letdown. They've leaned on their defense. They've leaned on the rebounding. They've leaned on their pace. But again, tonight, I mean, USC is a team that, because they played a couple non-conference games against mid-majors close, like their metrics have been all messed up, and it's been hard to kind of gain traction. But they've gotten a few good wins. Like Nebraska's not an easy place to go win, although they're towards the bottom of the conference. They went and did that. They won at Illinois. They beat Michigan State tonight. They've been trending in the right direction for a while now. And for Michigan State, it's interesting the way USC guarded them tonight. They said, "Hey, if Carson Cooper's on the floor, if Kohler's on the floor, if Zapala's on the floor, we're just going to plant our guy in the paint, and we're not even going to come out for these ball screens. If you want to shoot mid-range shots all night, knock yourself out." And that's what Michigan State ended up doing, and it was a great strategy from Musselman. Like, we're not going to let anything take place around the rim. You're going to shoot tough twos, and the shot quality will bear itself out as the night goes on, and we'll end up winning this game. And that's exactly what he did. So yeah, I mean, I don't have concerns about Michigan State, but it certainly makes the Big Ten race a little bit more interesting.
Yep. Goodman, go ahead, take your victory lap. Louisville goes to Georgia Tech. They're up by 10 with about 11 minutes left. Nathan George decides that nobody on the planet can guard me. Javian McCollum decides nobody on the planet can guard me. They forget how to miss shots, and Georgia Tech picks off my Louisville Cardinals. I'm devastated. I'm sad. It's been a tough day here in the great state of New Jersey. Goodman, go ahead, take your victory laps. Say what you got to say.
Well, the boys from our city didn't deliver today, and they have been, right? Rain Smith hit 1-3. He was 1 for 6. James Scott had 2 points. He had 11 rebounds, but between the two of them, they had 5 points. Georgia Tech's talented. They are talented. Dongo's really, really good, and again, Nathan George is they got players. So, to me, I'm not taking a victory lap. I actually think this Louisville team has performed much better than I thought they would this year. Now, the question is, can they sustain this in a league that's not great, that they're going to have to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, especially at home the rest of the way, right? Now, coming up, you got at BC, Miami at home, at NC State, at Notre Dame, Florida State at home, at Virginia Tech. I mean, those are 6 of the easiest games on the schedule that anybody is going to play in conference play all year. So what do you do in those games, Rob, is going to be very important to see where Louisville lands at the end of this. Are they a team that's fighting for a top 4 or 5 seed, or do they get back down to that 8-9 line or even on the bubble if they really slip up here down the stretch? These next 6 games, you can't go 3-3. You better go 5-1.
Yeah, I think 4 of them are going to be on the road, but those are all games that they probably should be winning, right? They probably should be winning all of those games. You're 100% correct about Georgia Tech. It just down the stretch, Damon Stoudemire found something with Nathan George. They went to it over and over and over and over and over again, and Louisville just really struggled to stop it. Defense is not that team's forte, and Georgia Tech found something that was working. Crowd got going, and it is what it is. Gentlemen, we've now been here for 106 minutes. Our very own Mike LaTulip has to go catch a flight in about 6 hours, so we want to make sure that he can actually go get some sleep. There's a lot of other stuff that we have to get to. If you tune in tomorrow night on the Field of 68 After Dark, we'll recap some
We're not doing toast?
No, we are doing toast. We'll get to some more of some of the games we didn't talk about. Gonzaga and St. Mary's are currently playing right now. Zags with a pretty impressive comeback are now leading in Moraga 50-49 with about 6.5 minutes left. So let's get into the toasts of the night. Jeff Goodman, we'll go to you first on this one.
One, Jonathan Calipari deserves this toast. My favorite coach went into Rupp Arena tonight, and right now he might not have left Lexington. He might stay in Lexington overnight. He might be out drinking somewhere, enjoying some wine. Who knows? Because he deserves it, man. I don't think he even thought he would go in there tonight and come away with a victory. Certainly the way he did. So, Cal, hell of a win, man.
Cheers. Cheers to John Calipari. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I hate going from Cal to Cooper Flagg, but we're going from Cal to Cooper Flagg because we didn't touch on him very much when we went Duke UNC, but I texted you guys early, like, this dude has entered a stratosphere as a prospect that I did not think was possible for him. And I've been a Cooper Flagg fan this whole time. And I think he's evolved from, hey, so well-rounded, does it all, to still having all those things and becoming an elite scorer at the college basketball level, like really elite scorer. And us three were on a show after Duke, Kansas, and Jeff, we talked about it, where it's like, didn't deal with the traps well, didn't deal with the pressure well. And I said on that show, great players, which Cooper Flagg is, invite it. Send to. Bring me 2. And I watched him tonight against North Carolina when they trapped him, pick their asses apart. And that's what makes this stuff so cool, man. Like seeing the real-time maturation of some of these guys, and even a guy like Cooper Flagg, who comes in with as much hype as he did to hit this gear. I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think it was possible. And I think, like what you're saying, Jeff, trying to figure out where he stacks up as far as like prospects over the last 25 years, especially as freshmen, like he's continuing to creep into a class that is pretty rarefied air, in my opinion. So that's toast of the night, Cooper Flagg.
I think I'd have him above Zion at this point.
I think that was what I was alluding to.
Yeah. I think I would have him above Zion as a prospect.
Right. Zion's a freak talent. Cooper is a unbelievable basketball player. Like that's what makes him so special.
Yeah. What we said about him at the start of the year was the stuff that he does great is not the loud stuff. It's not the stuff that's necessarily going to pop. It's not the stuff that's going to go viral. It's not the stuff that everyone's going to be talking about. And Duke was winning games early, and Cooper was doing all of that stuff. And it felt like that was a storyline that wasn't going the way that it probably should have been going, given that he's going to end up being the number 1 pick in the draft, right? And then like January hits, and it just clicks into high gear, and it flipped, and he is now still doing all of the stuff that isn't loud just as well. And also he's doing all the loud stuff. Like he's the passes, knocking down threes. He's dunking on people. He's getting blocked.
You know who he reminds
getting
me
all
of?
the highlights. Who?
You know who he reminds me of a little bit? They're not the same player. Nobody is. I mean, so anytime you try to compare somebody, everybody's like, no, he's not like him. But like he does a lot of the same things Grant Hill does or did. But healthy Grant Hill. Right? Like Grant Hill was a point forward. Grant Hill he could do everything. Like he was just Mr. Versatility. He could stuff the stat sheet. He could guard. He made people better. He could score when necessary, but he didn't force things. I think they're similar. And even their demeanors are a little bit similar. Like they're not outwardly like volatile guys, but they just, man, they play the right way hard all the time. That's who he kind of reminds me of.
Yeah, I don't hate that comparison. The reason why I'm so high on him is that I don't necessarily think there is an actual comparison for him, which makes me believe we're going to see something a little bit different when he gets to the next level. My toast of the night, the New Mexico Lobos, with about 4 minutes left in the first half, playing in the Spectrum in Logan, Utah. They were down 35-26. And I'm sitting here watching them like, oh, man, this might not go too well for our boy Richard Pitino. And they flipped a switch. They outscored them 56-28 for the rest of that game. It was 52-27 in the second half. The Lobos go into the Spectrum and win 82-63 to take over sole possession of first place in the Mountain West and put themselves in a spot where they might actually be like not just an at-large bid, but an at-large bid that can get a seed that might be able to win a couple games. So toast New Mexico Lobos, to Cooper Flagg, to John Calipari, and to everybody that took part and watched and joined us in the show and jumped in the chat. This was one of the best days of college basketball that I can ever remember watching. It felt like it was a movie from noon until
you know who we got to toast, Rob.
Right now.
Hey, Rob, you know who we got to toast? LaTulip for being able to handle this day, your first Saturday.
His first Saturday. Hey, Goodman. My favorite thing about LaTulip is that we're on here and me and you are sitting here like, oh man, how are we going to get through this night? And LaTulip was like, hold on, I got a point I got to make about Missouri. And then he breaks down all the stuff that Dennis Gate is doing offensively. I'm just like, man, he's locked in. He's one of us. He is one of us. So toast to Mike LaTulip, the greatest hire that Trevor Valise has ever made. Cheers, fellas. We will see you guys tomorrow night on the Field of 16.